The verdict? The celestial spire pierced the heart of Nexus Prime like a shard of crystallized starlight, its impossible architecture defying the physics of a dozen worlds. Within its highest chamber, beneath a dome that displayed the swirling majesty of the galactic core, Ambassador Maya Chen stood alone before the assembled Galactic Council. She had known this moment would come. 3 decades of diplomatic service, 3 decades of trying to prove humanity's worth to civilizations that had sailed between stars when Earth was still cooling from its formation. Now, at 62, with silver threading through her black hair and the weight of 8 billion souls pressing down on her shoulders, Maya Chen would hear humanity's final judgment. The council chamber was a study in cosmic hierarchy. 12 species arranged in a perfect circle, each on platforms that floated at precisely calculated heights. The Vextari, insectoid beings of pure logic, hovered highest. Their 3,000-year tenure as council chair afforded them that privilege. Below them, the crystalline Luminara refracted light into cascading rainbows. The massive, slow-moving Tharno-K, methane breathers in their environmental suits, occupied the lower positions alongside newer member species. High Chancellor Zexthar, the Vextari leader, clicked his mandibles in the pattern that preceded all formal pronouncements. The translation matrix hummed to life, rendering his chittering into words that echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Chen of Species Human Earth designation. The Council has deliberated for 17 standard cycles. We have reviewed the evidence. We have considered the testimony. We have weighed your people's contributions against their complications. Maya kept her face neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Beside the Chancellor's platform, the voting crystals began to glow, one for each council member ready to render judgment. Your species, Zexthar continued, has existed in galactic society for merely 47 years. In that time, you have violated 14 council protocols, refused compliance with 6 standardization accords, and demonstrated patterns of behavior the council finds disturbing. A holographic display materialized in the chamber's center, showing Earth's transgressions in painful detail. Maya recognized each one, moments that had seemed like progress to humanity, but violations to the council's rigid order. The unauthorized development of quantum artificial intelligence. The genetic modification programs that accelerated human evolution. The refusal to abandon faster-than-light research after the Council had deemed it sufficiently advanced. The establishment of independent colonies without Council permission. Each innovation, each breakthrough that made humanity proud, displayed now as evidence of their unworthiness. You are too independent, said Councillor Zaranes of the Luminara, her crystalline voice like wind chimes in a storm. You question where others accept. You innovate where stability is required. You dream of transcendence when your role is clearly defined. We are too willing to challenge authority, added Tharno-K Representative Gulmar, his deep rumble vibrating through the floor. To ignore the wisdom of elder species. To believe in your arrogance, that 47 years of star travel qualifies you to reshape galactic civilization. Maya had prepared her defense for months. She had practiced before mirrors, before advisors, before the empty vastness of space on the journey to Nexus Prime. Now she spoke, her voice steady and clear. Honored council members, humanity acknowledges our youth among the stars. We are students still, learning from those who came before. But the very qualities you condemn, our independence, our innovation, our refusal to accept limitations, these are not flaws. They are the essence of what makes us human. She gestured, activating her own holographic display. Images of human achievements cascaded through the chamber. Fusion reactors that powered cities without pollution, medical breakthroughs that eradicated diseases, art and music that had moved even the stoic Vextari to what might have been appreciation. We came to the stars with open hearts and eager minds. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have learned from you, adapted, grown. Yes, we question. Yes, we push boundaries. But is this not what all species must do to survive? To thrive? To matter? It is precisely that mindset, Zexthar interrupted, that makes your species incompatible with galactic civilization. Order requires obedience. Stability demands conformity. You speak of growth, Ambassador, but we see chaos. We see a species that, left unchecked, will destabilize everything we have built over millennia. The voting crystals pulsed brighter. Maya felt the moment slipping away, but she had one final card to play. Then we will leave, she said quietly. If humanity's presence threatens your order, we will find our own path among the stars. Grant us the right to depart peacefully. Allow us to settle beyond council space, to build our own civilization without interference. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. The Vextari did not experience emotion as humans understood it, but Zexthar's antennae twitched in what might have been satisfaction. Your request is noted and denied. Species that leave the Council represent a threat to security. Unknown variables. Potential rivals. No, Ambassador Chin. Humanity will be confined to your home system. All colonies will be dismantled. All advanced technology will be surrendered. You will remain on Earth, isolated from galactic civilization, until such time as you have learned to exist within proper boundaries. That could take centuries, Maya whispered. Millennia. Then your descendants may prove wiser than you. The voting began. One by one the crystals flared with decision. Maya watched, counting in her head, though she already knew the outcome. The Luminera voted for exile. The Tharnoke voted for exile. The younger species, those who might have sympathized with humanity's struggles, abstained or followed the majority. When the final vote was cast, the result was unanimous among those who voted. Humanity was cast out. Maya Chin stood straight, refusing to let them see her despair. The Galactic Council has spoken. Humanity will comply with Ambassador. The single word came through her private communication implant, a frequency that shouldn't have been accessible in the shielded council chamber. Captain Rebecca Torres, commander of humanity's defense fleet, speaking in clear violation of every protocol. Maya's eyes widened fractionally. That single breach told her everything. The plan, the impossible plan that she had dismissed as fantasy, was real. Was happening. We'll comply with the council's judgment, Maya finished, her voice gaining strength. We will return to Earth. We will dismantle our colonies. We will surrender our ships. She paused, meeting Zexthar's multifaceted gaze. But know this, honored council. Humanity has never been defined by the spaces we occupy or the technology we possess. We are defined by our spirit. And that you cannot cage. The Chancellor dismissed her with a wave of his foreleg. Your transport will depart within the hour. Farewell, Ambassador Chin. May your species find peace in isolation. Maya bowed, not in submission but in acknowledgement, and turned to leave. As she walked through the massive doors of the council chamber, her mind raced ahead to what came next. 40 light-years from Nexus Prime in Earth's orbit, the impossible was already in motion. Dr. James Okonkwo stood in the command center of the Prometheus station, watching as the last of the colony ships completed their quantum drive installations. Around him, holographic displays showed a web of activity spanning Earth's entire solar system. Thousands of ships, from massive generation vessels to swift frigates, all preparing for the journey that would define humanity's future. Status? He asked, his Nigerian accent thick with exhaustion. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. 94% of designated colonists are aboard, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Food synthesis systems at full capacity. Quantum drives testing nominal. We're actually ahead of schedule. Captain Rebecca Torres materialized beside James, her holographic form transmitted from the bridge of the flagship Defiant. At 45, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had commanded humanity's defense fleet through 3 separate first contact scenarios, 2 peaceful, 1 decidedly not. The council just rendered their verdict, Rebecca said. Maya gave the signal. We're go for launch in 6 hours. James felt his breath catch. 6 hours. In 6 hours, humanity would commit the greatest act of defiance in galactic history. The council had ordered them to stay, to submit. Instead, they would vanish into the cosmos. The quantum fold drives, James said, voicing the fear that had haunted him for months. Rebecca, we've only tested them at small scale. Taking 5,000 ships through simultaneously. Will work, Rebecca interrupted firmly. It has to work. Because the alternative is watching humanity wither and die on a single world, forbidden from reaching for the stars. She softened slightly. James, you've checked those calculations 1,000 times. The Kleinschen equations are solid. We'll make the jump. The Kleinschen equations. Named for physicist Michael Klein and, ironically, Ambassador Maya Chen's daughter, Emily, who had cracked the mathematics of quantum folding while still a graduate student. The council had forbidden further research when they realized the implications. Instantaneous travel across any distance, rendering their carefully controlled trade routes and military positions obsolete. Humanity had quietly continued the research anyway. All colony ships, this is Prometheus Control, James announced, his voice carrying across secure channels to every vessel in the fleet. Begin final system checks. In 6 hours we leave this cradle behind. In 6 hours we take our first steps as a truly free species. Everything you've prepared for, everything you've sacrificed, it comes to fruition now. Be ready. Across the solar system, millions of humans made their final preparations. Engineers triple-checked life support systems. Parents explained to children why they might never see Earth's blue skies again. Scientists loaded the collective knowledge of human civilization into quantum databases. Soldiers checked weapons they prayed they'd never need to use. In the deeper orbits, beyond Jupiter, 36 Council monitor stations tracked human activity with increasing alarm. Their reports flowed back to Nexus Prime in increasingly frantic streams. Humanity was moving, building, preparing for something. But the Council's response fleet was weeks away, and they had underestimated human determination before. Maya Chen returned to Earth on a Council transport as ordered. She walked through the security checkpoints at Geneva Spaceport, submitted to the scanning and documentation, and took a shuttle to the Global Defense Headquarters. Once inside the secure command center, buried beneath 300 meters of rock and shielded by technology the Council didn't know humanity possessed, she allowed herself to drop the diplomatic mask. "Tell me we're ready," she said to the assembled military and civilian leaders. General Marcus Webb, commander of Earth's defense forces, nodded grimly. Every person who wanted to go is aboard. Some chose to stay, about 1 billion spread across Earth. They'll maintain the illusion that humanity's complying with Council demands while buying us time to get established. And the destination? The Veil Nebula, sector designated Tartarus 9. Completely uncharted, beyond the Council's navigational networks. If James's quantum drives work, we'll be there in minutes. If they don't. He didn't finish the sentence. Maya moved to the central holographic display, watching the blinking icons that represented humanity's hope. 5,000 ships. 7 billion people leaving the only home humanity had ever known. When I stood before the Council, she said softly, I saw their fear. They're not condemning us because we're dangerous. They're condemning us because we remind them of what they've lost. The courage to grow. The willingness to risk. They've become so focused on preservation that they've forgotten how to live. Then we'll show them, Rebecca Torres said, her hologram appearing beside Maya. We'll build something out there in the darkness. Something that makes them remember what's possible. The countdown continued. 5 hours. 4. 3. Across Earth, final messages were recorded. Lovers said goodbye. Children pressed their faces against viewports, memorizing the world they were leaving. Artists captured final images of humanity's birthplace. Historians wrote frantically, documenting everything, knowing that what came next would define their species for generations. 2 hours remained when the Council's response fleet entered the solar system, their weapons charging and their demands screaming across every frequency, cease all activity. Submit to Council authority. Resistance will be met with force. Ignore them, Maya ordered. They're too far out to stop us. 1 hour. James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of Prometheus Station, surrounded by the brightest minds humanity had produced. Together, they made final adjustments to calculations that would bend space itself to human will. Quantum field generators at maximum, reported Dr. Sarah Kamathi from engineering. Harmonic resonance achieved across all ships. We're synchronized. 30 minutes. The Council fleet accelerated, but they were hours away still. Furious transmissions demanded compliance, threatened consequences, promised mercy if humanity surrendered immediately. Rebecca Torres broadcast one final message to Earth and the approaching Council ships. Her face, calm and determined, appeared on every screen across the solar system and beyond. To the Galactic Council, you have cast us out, declared us unworthy, attempted to cage us on our homeworld. You believed we would submit. You were wrong. To those who remain on Earth, guard our birthplace well. We will return someday not as exiles but as equals. To those who journey with us into the unknown, tonight we prove that no species can chain the human spirit. The stars themselves will know our names. 10 minutes. The quantum drives began their final power-up sequence, energy levels climbing toward critical thresholds. Space around each ship began to shimmer, reality bending under the force of technologies that shouldn't exist. 5 minutes. In the command center beneath Geneva, Maya Chen held her breath. In orbit aboard Defiant, Rebecca Torres gripped her command chair. In Prometheus Station, James Okonkwo whispered a prayer to gods he wasn't sure he believed in. 1 minute. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Kim announced. Quantum fold drives at maximum. Navigation locked. Destination, Veil Nebula, Tartarus 9. Distance, 1,400 light-years. 30 seconds. The council fleet screamed threats and pleas in equal measure, finally understanding what was about to happen. 10 seconds. Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her daughter Emily, who had made this moment possible. Rebecca thought of every human who had dared to dream of stars. James thought of the equations, the beautiful mathematics that would carry them home. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5,000 ships and 7 billion humans vanished from Earth's solar system in a cascade of quantum brilliance, leaving only a ghost of tachyon radiation and the echo of Rebecca Torres's final words. The stars themselves will know our names. The council fleet arrived to find emptiness where humanity had been. On Earth, the billion who remained looked up at the sky and smiled, knowing their species had just made the greatest escape in galactic history. In the command center, Maya Chen opened her eyes and whispered to the empty displays, "Good luck. Make it count." 1,400 light-years away, in a region of space no council ship had ever visited, 5,000 human vessels materialized in the swirling chaos of the Veil Nebula, and humanity's true story among the stars began. Captain Rebecca Torres materialized beside James, her holographic form transmitted from the bridge of the flagship Defiant. At 45, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had commanded humanity's defense fleet through 3 separate first-contact scenarios, 2 peaceful, 1 decidedly not. "The council just rendered their verdict," Rebecca said. Maya gave the signal. "We're go for launch in 6 hours. James felt his breath catch. 6 hours. In 6 hours, humanity would commit the greatest act of defiance in galactic history. The council had ordered them to stay, to submit. Instead, they would vanish into the cosmos. "The quantum fold drives," James said, voicing the fear that had haunted him for months. "Rebecca, we've only tested them at small scale. Taking 5,000 ships through simultaneously." "Will work," Rebecca interrupted firmly. "It has to work. Because the alternative is watching humanity wither and die on a single world, forbidden from reaching for the stars." She softened slightly. "James, you've checked those calculations 1,000 times. The Kleinschen equations are solid. We'll make the jump." The Kleinschen equations. Named for physicist Michael Klein and, ironically, Ambassador Maya Chen's daughter, Emily, who had cracked the mathematics of quantum folding while still a graduate student. The council had forbidden further research when they realized the implications. Instantaneous travel across any distance, rendering their carefully controlled trade routes and military positions obsolete. Humanity had quietly continued the research anyway. "All colony ships, this is Prometheus Control," James announced, his voice carrying across secure channels to every vessel in the fleet. "Begin final system checks. In 6 hours we leave this cradle behind. In 6 hours we take our first steps as a truly free species. Everything you've prepared for, everything you've sacrificed, it comes to fruition now. Be ready." Across the solar system, millions of humans made their final preparations. Engineers triple-checked life support systems. Parents explained to children why they might never see Earth's blue skies again. Scientists loaded the collective knowledge of human civilization into quantum databases. Soldiers checked weapons they prayed they'd never need to use. In the deeper orbits, beyond Jupiter, 36 council monitor stations tracked human activity with increasing alarm. Their reports flowed back to Nexus Prime in increasingly frantic streams. Humanity was moving, building, preparing for something. But the council's response fleet was weeks away, and they had underestimated human determination before. Maya Chen returned to Earth on a council transport as ordered. She walked through the security checkpoints at Geneva Spaceport, submitted to the scanning and documentation, and took a shuttle to the Global Defense Headquarters. Once inside the secure command center, buried beneath 300 meters of rock and shielded by technology the council didn't know humanity possessed, she allowed herself to drop the diplomatic mask. "Tell me we're ready," she said to the assembled military and civilian leaders. General Marcus Webb, commander of Earth's defense forces, nodded grimly. Every person who wanted to go is aboard. Some chose to stay, about 1 billion spread across Earth. They'll maintain the illusion that humanity's complying with council demands while buying us time to get established. And the destination? The Veil Nebula, sector designated Tartarus 9. Completely uncharted, beyond the council's navigational networks. If James's quantum drives work, we'll be there in minutes. If they don't. He didn't finish the sentence. Maya moved to the central holographic display, watching the blinking icons that represented humanity's hope. 5,000 ships. 7 billion people leaving the only home humanity had ever known. "When I stood before the council," she said softly, "I saw their fear. They're not condemning us because we're dangerous. They're condemning us because we remind them of what they've lost. The courage to grow. The willingness to risk. They've become so focused on preservation that they've forgotten how to live. Then we'll show them, Rebecca Torres said, her hologram appearing beside Maya. We'll build something out there in the darkness. Something that makes them remember what's possible. The countdown continued. 5 hours. 4. 3. Across Earth, final messages were recorded. Lovers said goodbye. Children pressed their faces against viewports, memorizing the world they were leaving. Artists captured final images of humanity's birthplace. Historians wrote frantically, documenting everything, knowing that what came next would define their species for generations. 2 hours remained when the Council's response fleet entered the solar system, their weapons charging and their demands screaming across every frequency, cease all activity. Submit to Council authority. Resistance will be met with force. Ignore them, Maya ordered. They're too far out to stop us. 1 hour. James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of Prometheus Station, surrounded by the brightest minds humanity had produced. Together, they made final adjustments to calculations that would bend space itself to human will. Quantum field generators at maximum, reported Dr. Sarah Kamathi from engineering. Harmonic resonance achieved across all ships. We're synchronized. 30 minutes. The Council fleet accelerated, but they were hours away still. Furious transmissions demanded compliance, threatened consequences, promised mercy if humanity surrendered immediately. Rebecca Torres broadcast one final message to Earth and the approaching Council ships. Her face, calm and determined, appeared on every screen across the solar system and beyond. To the Galactic Council, you have cast us out, declared us unworthy, attempted to cage us on our homeworld. You believed we would submit. You were wrong. To those who remain on Earth, guard our birthplace well. We will return someday not as exiles but as equals. To those who journey with us into the unknown, tonight we prove that no species can chain the human spirit. The stars themselves will know our names. 10 minutes. The quantum drives began their final power-up sequence, energy levels climbing toward critical thresholds. Space around each ship began to shimmer, reality bending under the force of technologies that shouldn't exist. 5 minutes. In the command center beneath Geneva, Maya Chen held her breath. In orbit aboard Defiant, Rebecca Torres gripped her command chair. In Prometheus Station, James Okonkwo whispered a prayer to gods he wasn't sure he believed in. 1 minute. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Kim announced. Quantum fold drives at maximum. Navigation locked. Destination, Veil Nebula, Tartarus 9. Distance, 1,400 light-years. 30 seconds. The Council fleet screamed threats and pleas in equal measure, finally understanding what was about to happen. 10 seconds. Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her daughter Emily, who had made this moment possible. Rebecca thought of every human who had dared to dream of stars. James thought of the equations, the beautiful mathematics that would carry them home. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5,000 ships and 7 billion humans vanished from Earth's solar system in a cascade of quantum brilliance, leaving only a ghost of tachyon radiation and the echo of Rebecca Torres's final words. The stars themselves will know our names. The Council fleet arrived to find emptiness where humanity had been. On Earth, the billion who remained looked up at the sky and smiled, knowing their species had just made the greatest escape in galactic history. In the command center, Maya Chen opened her eyes and whispered to the empty displays, "Good luck. Make it count." 1,400 light-years away, in a region of space no Council ship had ever visited, 5,000 human vessels materialized in the swirling chaos of the Veil Nebula, and humanity's true story among the stars began. The founding. 5 years after the Exodus, Marcus Webb stood at the edge of the crystalline caves on Aurora, humanity's first established colony world, and wondered if his grandmother had felt this same mixture of awe and terror when she'd led the defense of Earth. The caves pulsed with bioluminescent light, casting shadows that seemed to move with purpose. Marcus was 24 now, born on Earth but raised among the stars, part of the first generation to never know the Council's shadow hanging over humanity's dreams. He'd volunteered for the Exploration Corps the moment he'd come of age, driven by the same curiosity that had gotten humanity exiled in the first place. Reading any life signs? He called back to his team, clustered near the cave entrance with their scanning equipment. Negative on biologicals, Dr. Yuki Tanaka responded, her voice slightly distorted by the cave's unusual acoustic properties. But I'm getting energy signatures that make no sense. Marcus, whatever's down there, it's definitely not natural. Marcus pressed deeper into the cave system, following a passage that seemed to have been deliberately carved, its walls too smooth and uniform to be geological formation. The bioluminescence grew brighter as he descended, pulsing in patterns that almost seemed like communication. 5 years. 5 years since 7 billion humans had gambled everything on a quantum jump into the unknown. 5 years of struggle, sacrifice, and surprising triumph. The Veil Nebula had proven both more hostile and more welcoming than anyone had anticipated. Aurora itself was a monument to human determination. A world with marginally breathable atmosphere, abundant water, and a biosphere that was almost compatible with human life. Almost. The first 18 months had been brutal, atmospheric adjustments that killed crops, indigenous microorganisms that caused mysterious fevers, equipment failures that no one had prepared for. They'd lost 12,000 colonists in those early days. 12,000 names etched into the memorial wall in New Geneva, Aurora's capital city. 12,000 people who'd escaped the council only to find that freedom came with a terrible price. But humanity had adapted. They always did. The atmospheric processors designed by the Prometheus team had gradually transformed Aurora's air. Medical researchers had cracked the code of the indigenous bacteria and developed treatments. Engineers had improvised solutions to problems that would have sent council species running for their established protocols. Now Aurora thrived. 3 million humans called it home, living in a dozen cities that blended human architecture with adaptations to the planet's unique environment. Farms spread across the northern continent, growing earth crops alongside native plants that humans had learned to cultivate. Children played in parks where earth trees grew alongside Aurora's towering crystal bark forests. But Aurora was just one world. Across the Veil Nebula, humanity had established 47 colonies of varying sizes. Some were thriving metropolises like Aurora. Others were frontier outposts, research stations, and industrial facilities harvesting resources from asteroid fields and gas giants. And every one of them existed in defiance of the Galactic Council's judgment. Marcus's thoughts were interrupted as his boot struck something metallic. He directed his headlamp downward and froze. A door. Unmistakably artificial, covered in symbols that were definitely not human in origin. "Team," he said quietly into his comm, "you need to see this." 20 minutes later, the entire exploration team stood before the door, their scanning equipment painting the air with holographic data streams. "The metal is an alloy we've never encountered," Yuki said, her fingers dancing across her portable terminal. "Carbon titanium base, but there are elements here that aren't on any periodic table I know. And the energy signature. Marcus, this thing is still powered. After how long?" "The weathering on the cave entrance suggests at least 10,000 years, added Dr. Emmanuel Okafor, the team's geologist. "Possibly much longer. But this door looks like it was sealed yesterday." Marcus reached out, letting his fingers trace the symbols carved into the door's surface. They seemed to shift under his touch, rearranging themselves into new patterns. And then, impossibly, into something he could read. "Welcome newcomers," the symbols now said in perfect English. "Those who fled tyranny. Those who dared the void. Enter if you seek alliance." The team exchanged glances. First contact protocols demanded they report back immediately, wait for diplomatic and military support, follow established procedures. Marcus pressed his hand firmly against the door. It opened with a whisper of ancient machinery, revealing a chamber beyond that blazed with golden light. Inside the chamber they found not ruins but a message. Holographic projections sprang to life as they entered, showing a species unlike any humanity had encountered. Tall, slender beings with 6 limbs, 4 arms and 2 legs, and faces that were almost human in their expressiveness despite having 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. The hologram spoke, and once again the words rearranged themselves into English, into Mandarin, into Arabic, into every human language simultaneously, as if the technology could read their minds and adapt. "I am Archive Keeper Thelnara of the Kethral Unity. If you are seeing this message, it means you are not of the Council species. It means you have found your way to this forgotten sector, perhaps fleeing as we once did. It means you, like us, refuse to accept chains." The hologram showed images of a vast civilization. Cities that floated in gas giant atmospheres, ships that moved between dimensions, technologies that made humanity's quantum drives look primitive. 12,000 of your years ago, the Galactic Council cast out the Kethral. Our crime was curiosity. Our sin was dreaming of what lay beyond known space. They called us dangerous, unstable, unworthy of civilization. They attempted to confine us. We refused. Marcus felt his heart racing. The parallels were impossible to ignore. We fled to this nebula, to these hidden worlds. We built a new civilization, free from the Council's fear and stagnation. We thrived for 6,000 years, pushing the boundaries of science and art and philosophy. We became more than we had ever been under Council rule. The hologram paused, and Thelnara's expression shifted to something like sorrow. But time is cruel to even the greatest civilizations. A plague swept through our worlds, born from our own experiments with dimensional biology. We could not stop it. Within 3 generations, the Kethral unity fell from billions to thousands, and then to mere hundreds. In the end, only a few of us remained. The images shifted, showing empty cities being reclaimed by nature, laboratories going dark, ships drifting silently through space. We placed ourselves in stasis, hoping that time would bring either a cure for our plague or worthy inheritors for what we built. In this chamber, you will find coordinates to 47 Kethral installations across this sector. Technologies we developed. Knowledge we accumulated. Resources we gathered. All of it waiting for those brave enough to reach for it. Thelnara stepped forward, her holographic form seeming to look directly at Marcus. But more than that, you will find us. The last of the Kethral, sleeping in stasis, waiting for the day when we might wake to a nebula not ruled by fear. If you have found this message, if you have survived in defiance of the Council, then perhaps you are those worthy inheritors. Perhaps together we can build something greater than either of our species could alone. The hologram faded, leaving a central pedestal that now glowed with information, star charts, technical specifications, and most importantly, coordinates to the Kethral's primary stasis facility. Yuki was already downloading everything, her hands shaking with excitement. Marcus, this changes everything. Their technology, their knowledge, we're not just survivors anymore. We could become a true power. We need to report this immediately, Emmanuel said. The Council can't know about this. Not yet. Marcus nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. The Kethral had been exiled just like humanity. They built something magnificent out here in the darkness. And now, they were offering an alliance across 12 millennia. Get everything transmitted to Defiant and the civilian government, Marcus ordered. Encrypted, highest priority. And then he looked at the star charts showing the Kethral stasis facility, only 3 light-years away. Then we go wake them up. The news of Marcus's discovery spread through the human colonies like wildfire. Within days, Ambassador Maya Chin, now serving as president of the Colonial Assembly, had convened an emergency session to discuss the implications. In the Assembly Hall in New Geneva, representatives from every major colony gathered physically and holographically. Maya, now 67, stood before them with the same commanding presence she'd displayed before the Galactic Council years earlier. 5 years ago, we fled the Council believing we were alone, she said. We thought humanity's only allies would be the worlds we could terraform and the resources we could exploit. Today we learn we were wrong. The Kethral faced the same judgment we did. They made the same choice, freedom over submission. And they offer us not just their technology but partnership. Partnership with a dead civilization, countered Governor Sarah Mendez of the colony World Perseverance. President Chin, the Kethral have been in stasis for thousands of years. We don't know if they can even be revived. We don't know if they'll be friendly when they wake. We don't know if their plague is still active. All valid concerns, Admiral Rebecca Torres interjected from her flagship orbiting Aurora. But consider what we stand to gain. The Kethral survived here for 6,000 years after their exile. 6,000 years of research and development in technologies the Council banned. If even a fraction of that knowledge is recoverable, it could mean the difference between survival and extinction for us. Dr. James Okonkwo, who had been studying the Kethral data continuously since it arrived, added his perspective. Their dimensional research alone could revolutionize our defenses. The Council's ships move through normal space, fast but predictable. The Kethral developed drives that skip between dimensions, making their movements nearly impossible to track or intercept. And their weapons systems. He paused, calling up holographic schematics. They make our plasma cannons look like children's toys. You're talking about an arms race, said Counselor David Ostrovsky from New Earth Colony. About turning ourselves into the kind of power the Council feared we'd become. I'm talking about survival, James shot back. The Council knows we're out here now. Maybe not exactly where, but they know we didn't just accept exile. They're looking for us. When they find us, and they will, we need to be ready. Maya let the debate continue for another hour before calling for order. She'd expected the division, Humanity had never been a monolithic species, and 5 years of colonial life had only strengthened individual settlements' sense of autonomy. Finally she spoke. A vote. We send an expedition to the Kethral stasis facility. If they can be safely revived, we offer them shelter and partnership. If not, we study what we can and treat their installations with the respect due to a fallen civilization. All in favor? The vote was close, 63 to 37, but it passed. 3 weeks later, a fleet of 15 human ships dropped out of quantum fold near a moon-sized structure that orbited a red dwarf star. The Kethral Sleeper Ark, built to house the last remnants of their species until the universe granted them a second chance. Marcus Webb was part of the boarding team along with humanity's best medical researchers, engineers and, just in case, a full company of colonial marines. The Ark's automated systems recognized them immediately, doors opening without resistance, emergency power coming online as if the structure had been merely napping rather than abandoned for millennia. In the central chamber they found them. 300 Kethral, each in a stasis pod that hummed with technology that kept them balanced precisely between life and death. Dr. Keiko Sato, humanity's leading expert in cryogenic suspension, examined the pods with wonder. The sophistication here is breathtaking. Each individual is maintained at the quantum level, their cellular structure preserved perfectly. We could learn so much from this. Can we wake them? Marcus asked. Theoretically, yes. The pods are designed for revival. But there's a risk. We don't know if their plague is still a threat, or if the stasis was meant to last this long, or if... Risk is what we do, Marcus interrupted gently. It's what got us exiled in the first place. Let's give these people their second chance. The revival process took 6 hours. They started with a single pod, following the procedures outlined in the Kethral database, praying that 12,000 years of technology would still function as designed. When the pod opened and the Kethral inside drew their first breath in millennia, every human in the chamber held their breath. The beings' 4 eyes opened, adjusting to light they hadn't seen since the last age of their civilization. They were exactly as the holograms had shown, tall, graceful, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors like a mood ring, currently displaying patterns that their translation software indicated meant confusion and hope intermingled. Who? The Kethral said, their voice melodic and strange. Who are you? Marcus stepped forward, hands open in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. We're human. We're exiles just like you were. We found your message. We came to wake you up. The Kethral, archive keeper Thelnura, the same one who had recorded the message, stared at them for a long moment. Then their skin shifted to patterns that the translation matrix rendered as joy overwhelming, and they began to weep. We thought, we hoped, but we never truly believed. Thelnura managed between sobs. The council still endures. They do, Maya-chin said, stepping forward. She'd insisted on being present for first contact. And they still exile those who dare to dream. But we're building something out here. Something that doesn't require their approval. And we'd like you to be part of it. Over the next 3 months, all 300 Kethral were successfully revived. The plague that had devastated their civilization had run its course during their long sleep, burning itself out with no hosts to sustain it. They were weak, disoriented, grieving for a civilization lost to time. But they were also brilliant, creative, and burning with the same fierce independence that had defined humanity's exile. The Kethral integrated into human society with surprising ease. Their 4 arms made them natural engineers and artists. Their deep understanding of dimensional physics revolutionized human technology. Their philosophical tradition of dreaming beyond walls resonated with humanity's own rejection of imposed limits. 6 months after first contact, in a ceremony broadcast across all human colonies and attended by both species, the Dominion was officially founded. Not a government in the Council's hierarchical sense, but a federation of free peoples committed to mutual protection and unlimited growth. Maya-chin and archive keeper Thelnura signed the charter together, establishing principles that would define the Dominion for generations. We who were cast out shall build a civilization of choice, not compulsion. We who were deemed unworthy shall prove that worth is not bestowed by others, but earned through courage and compassion. We who were told to dream smaller shall dream of touching infinity itself. The ceremony concluded with a flyover of the assembled fleets, human vessels flying alongside newly awakened Kethral ships, a display of unity that would have been impossible under Council rule. But even as they celebrated, long-range sensors picked up troubling data. Council probe ships, venturing into the outer edges of the Veil Nebula. Scout vessels mapping the region, looking for signs of human habitation. And beyond the nebula's edge, building in a sector officially designated as a military exercise zone but unofficially known to be a staging ground, the Council was gathering its forces. Admiral Torres reviewed the intelligence reports with growing concern. They're preparing for war. Multiple battle groups, supply ships, troop transports. This isn't a patrol, it's an invasion fleet. How long do we have? Maya asked. 3 months. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. In the assembly hall, as delegates celebrated the Dominion's founding, Maya Chin looked at the star charts and made a decision that would define humanity's future. Then we have 3 months to prepare. 3 months to prove that those who are exiled can still stand and fight. 3 months to show the Council that we're not victims, we're survivors. She turned to Admiral Torres and Archive Keeper Thelnara, both of whom had become her closest advisors. Send word to every colony. Call in every ship. Contact every engineer and scientist. The Galactic Council is coming for us. She smiled, and in that smile was the fierce determination of a species that had never learned to quit. Let's give them a proper welcome. The Dominion's first true test was approaching. And humanity, joined now by the Kethral and soon by others who heard the call of freedom, would be ready. In the crystalline caves of Aurora, where Marcus Webb had discovered the Kethral message, the bioluminescence pulsed brighter than ever before, as if the planet itself celebrated the alliance of exiled peoples. And across the Veil Nebula, on 47 worlds where humans and Kethral now built their future together, lights blazed in defiance of the darkness. The Council had cast them out. Now they would learn what humanity could build when given no choice but to succeed. The Dominion's age had begun. The reckoning. The Council Armada emerged from quantum transit at the edge of the Veil Nebula like a plague of metal locusts, their ships numbering in the thousands. Admiral Kethvar of the Vextari High Command stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Absolute Authority and surveyed his fleet with satisfaction. 40 Council species had contributed vessels to this mission. 2,000 warships, each representing the pinnacle of galactic military technology. Enough firepower to sterilize 100 worlds. And all of it aimed at one purpose: eradicating humanity's rebellion before it could inspire others to follow. Begin scanning protocols, Kethvar commanded. Locate human colonies. Prioritize military installations and population centers. His tactical officer, a Luminara named Shureth, manipulated holographic controls with crystalline appendages. Admiral, initial scans are encountering significant interference. The nebula's natural radiation combined with what appears to be deliberate signal jamming. We're detecting energy signatures consistent with settlements, but precise locations are difficult to confirm. Deploy probe swarms. I want every planet, every moon, every asteroid mapped. The humans cannot hide an entire civilization. But even as he gave the orders, Kethvar felt the first whisper of doubt. Intelligence reports had suggested a scattered refugee population, perhaps a few 100,000 survivors clinging to marginal worlds. The scale of interference his sensors were detecting suggested something far more organized. On Aurora, 3 months of frantic preparation had transformed the Dominion from a scattered collection of colonies into something approaching a unified military power. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the Dominion Command Center, watching holographic displays that showed the Council fleet's positions in real time. They're exactly where we expected, she said to the assembled War Council. Aggressive, predictable, convinced of their own superiority. President Maya Chin, wearing a military-style uniform rather than her usual diplomatic attire, nodded grimly. She'd left politics behind when war became inevitable. The diplomacy would come later, after they'd proven the Dominion couldn't be destroyed by force. Status of our forces? Maya asked. Archive Keeper Thelnara, their 4 arms manipulating multiple control interfaces simultaneously, brought up fleet compositions. 347 ships combat ready. Human vessels account for 263, integrated with Kethral dimensional drives and targeting systems. 84 are Kethral designs restored and modernized. We're outnumbered nearly 6 to 1. Numbers don't tell the whole story, interjected Commander Marcus Webb, promoted to strategic operations after his discovery of the Kethral. We have advantages they don't expect. The Kethral dimensional technology, the modifications we've made to our quantum drives, and most importantly, we're fighting for our survival. They're fighting to preserve an abstract concept of order. Dr. James Okonkwo, now serving as Director of Advanced Weapons Research, highlighted several positions on the tactical map. The network is in place. 64 autonomous defense platforms throughout the Aurora system, Another 120 spread across our other major colonies. Each one armed with dimensional disruptors, weapons that destabilize the energy fields Council ships use for faster-than-light travel. If we can draw them into effective range. When we draw them in, Rebecca corrected. We're not if anymore, James. We're when and how. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. Rather than scatter and hide, the Dominion would concentrate its forces at Aurora and make a stand. They would use every trick, every advantage, every desperate gambit to turn the battle into chaos. The one environment where superior numbers mattered less than adaptability and creativity. In other words, they'd fight exactly how humanity had always fought. Send the signal, Maya ordered. All ships to rally points. All civilians to shelters. All hope to action. Across the Dominion the call went out. Every colony sent what they could spare. Every ship, from massive cruisers to tiny mining vessels retrofitted with weapons, began converging on Aurora. But they weren't the only ones responding to the call. Deep in Council space, Subcommander Relthick of the Zijantai people received a heavily encrypted message on a frequency that shouldn't have existed. The Zijantai, a reptilian species known for their loyalty to the Council, had been members in good standing for 8 centuries. But Relthick remembered stories from their species' early days in the Council. Stories of how their innovative terraforming techniques had been standardized into inefficiency. How their cultural traditions had been deemed non-conforming and discouraged. How, slowly and subtly, they'd been molded into another cog in the Council's machine. The message showed images of Aurora. Of humans and Kethral working together building something new. Of technologies the Council had banned being used not for destruction, but for creation. And it included a simple invitation. Join us. Not as subjects but as partners. Not as those who obey but as those who dare. Relthick looked at their fleet. 37 ships assigned to Admiral Kethvar's armada, ready to help destroy these human rebels. And made a decision that would cost them everything they'd built under Council rule, but might gain them something far more valuable, the freedom to choose their own path. 3 days after the Council armada entered the Veil Nebula, Relthick sent a message to the Dominion. Zijantai 3rd Fleet requests permission to defect. We would stand with you. Maya Chin read the message 3 times, hardly daring to believe it. Verify authenticity. This could be a trick. But it wasn't. Within 6 hours, 37 Zijantai vessels broke formation from the Council armada and made emergency quantum jumps toward Aurora. Behind them, the Council fleet erupted in chaos. Pursuit ships scrambling, commanders screaming contradictory orders, the carefully planned invasion suddenly losing 3% of its strength to desertion. Worse, from the Council's perspective, was the message Relthick broadcast on every frequency before jumping. The humans are right. The Council doesn't lead, it smothers. We will not be party to destroying those who dare to dream. The news spread like a virus through the Council's forces. Most ships remained loyal, but doubt had been planted. And doubt, in a military force built on rigid obedience, was more dangerous than any weapon. The Battle of Aurora began at 0847 hours, Galactic Standard Time, when the Council armada achieved weapons range of the planet. Admiral Kethvar had expected a quick engagement. Human ships would scatter or attempt a futile defense. His forces would overwhelm them with superior numbers and technology, and the rebellion would be crushed before others could follow their example. Instead, the Dominion fleet held position in a defensive formation around Aurora that made no tactical sense by Council standards. Ships scattered in seemingly random patterns, with massive gaps in coverage that invited attack. They're disorganized, Tactical Officer Shareth observed. Shall we exploit the openings in their formation? Cautiously, Kethvar ordered, antennae twitching with suspicion. Deploy forward elements. Test their defenses. 200 Council ships accelerated toward Aurora, weapons charging, expecting token resistance before the real battle began. They discovered their mistake when the first vessels crossed the threshold into the gaps in Dominion coverage. The dimensional disruptors activated, flooding space with energy fields that destabilized the quantum matrices powering Council faster-than-light drives. Ships that had been accelerating at relativistic speeds found themselves suddenly unable to maneuver effectively, momentum carrying them into kill zones where Dominion vessels waited in ambush. Kethral ships phased into normal space from dimensional pockets that Council sensors couldn't detect. Human vessels, smaller and more maneuvered than their Council counterparts, swarmed around the disabled ships like piranhas. The gaps in coverage had been traps, and 200 Council ships found themselves fighting for survival rather than pressing an easy victory. Dimensional warfare, Kethvar hissed. They're using Kethral technology. How? His intelligence reports had mentioned the possibility of Kethral survivors, but centuries of Council doctrine insisted the Kethral unity had been completely destroyed by their plague. Clearly, Council doctrine had been wrong. Pull back forward elements, he ordered. Regroup and prepare for coordinated assault. If they want to hide behind tricks and deception, we'll demonstrate the power of overwhelming force. But retreating proved harder than advancing. The Dominion fleet pursued, quantum drives allowing sudden bursts of speed that let human ships strike and fade before Council weapons could acquire locks. Kethral ships appeared from nowhere, fired devastating dimensional weapons that tore holes in reality itself, then vanished back into their pocket dimensions. What should have been an orderly withdrawal became a fighting retreat, with Council ships taking damage from enemies they couldn't effectively target. In the Dominion Command Center, Rebecca Torres watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. They're adapting faster than we hoped, but it's working. We're bleeding them, making them cautious. We can't sustain this for long, Thelnara cautioned. The dimensional disruptors were designed for ambush, not sustained combat. Once they understand the technology, they'll find countermeasures. And we simply don't have the numbers for a protracted engagement. Marcus highlighted several Council ships on the tactical display, vessels that had broken formation and were maneuvering erratically, not attacking but not retreating either. Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from 19 Council ships. They're asking about defection procedures. A stunned silence fell over the command center. Maya was the first to recover. Relthic's broadcast is having an impact. James, can we safely accept defectors in the middle of a battle? No, James said bluntly. If even one of those requests is a ruse, a Trojan horse, they could devastate our formations from inside. But if they're genuine, Maya countered, we could be witnessing the beginning of the Council's collapse. 19 ships today. How many tomorrow when others see that defection is possible? Rebecca made the call. Tell them to jump to coordinates we'll provide, away from the battle. We'll verify their intentions after we've survived this. If they're genuine, welcome. If not, they'll be too far away to affect the outcome here. 14 of the 19 ships accepted, their quantum drives activating as they fled the battle, leaving the Council armada, not advancing toward the Dominion. Admiral Kethvar watched the desertions with mounting rage. This was supposed to be a simple police action against refugees. Instead, it had become a war that was actively destroying the Council's unity. Admiral, Shureth reported, we're receiving orders from the High Council. They're demanding immediate victory regardless of cost. They're authorizing use of planet-killer weapons. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in distress. Planet killers were supposed to be last resort weapons, used only against existential threats to galactic civilization. Deploying them against what amounted to a colony world would be seen as proof of the Council's desperation. But orders were orders. Deploy the Terminus-class dreadnoughts. Target Aurora directly. If we cannot defeat the humans in ship-to-ship combat, we'll eliminate their capital and break their spirit. 3 massive vessels, each the size of a small moon, moved through the Council formation. Their weapons had never been intended for ships. They were designed to crack planets, to burn atmospheres, to end civilizations. On Aurora, alarms screamed as sensors detected the energy buildup. They're preparing to glass the planet, Rebecca said, her voice hollow. We can't stop weapons of that scale. Not with what we have. Maya looked at the tactical display, at the 3 dreadnoughts moving into position, at the millions of humans in Kethral sheltering in bunkers that wouldn't save them from what was coming. Then we make them stop, she said quietly. She turned to Marcus. Activate Protocol Lighthouse. President Chen, that's an order, Commander. Activate it now. Protocol Lighthouse was humanity's final contingency, a broadcast that would go out on every Council frequency, encrypted so that only individual receivers could decode it, not command structures. A message designed to bypass official channels and speak directly to every single being in the Council armada. Maya's face appeared on view screens throughout the Council fleet, transmitted with technology that made jamming impossible. To every soldier, every crew member, every being following orders to destroy Aurora. I am Maya Chin, President of the Dominion of Free Peoples. 5 years ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and watched as they voted to exile humanity. Today, your commanders prepare to commit genocide against us. In the Council armada, officers tried to block the transmission, but it played on personal devices, on helmet displays, on every screen that could display an image. I ask you to consider what you're part of. You've been told we're dangerous, that we threaten galactic stability. But look at what we've built. Humans and Kethral working together. The Zichentai who joined us, choosing partnership over domination. We're not perfect, but we're trying to build something where people are free to choose their own destiny. Maya's image was replaced with footage of Aurora. Children of multiple species playing together, scientists collaborating, artists creating works that blended human and Kethral aesthetic traditions. Your weapons are aimed at families. At dreamers. At people whose only crime was refusing to obey without question. Can you really destroy that? Can you really look at your own families and tell them you exterminated an entire civilization because they dared to be independent? On the absolute authority, Admiral Kethvar watched as his crew began to hesitate. Even among the Vextari, known for their logical detachment, he saw mandibles twitching with uncertainty. This is council propaganda, he insisted. They're trying to manipulate you. Focus on your duty. But Maya wasn't finished. I won't ask you to join us. I won't ask you to defect. I only ask that you think for yourselves. Question the orders you're given. Consider whether the civilization you're defending is worth more than the civilization you're about to destroy. And if you conclude that following orders makes you complicit in atrocity, then do what your conscience demands. The transmission ended. For 10 seconds nothing happened. Then, on the Dreadnought Celestial Hammer, 47 crew members refused to activate the planet killer weapon. Their commander tried to override them, but more refused. Within minutes, the entire crew had staged a mutiny, taking their captain into custody and broadcasting their own message. We will not be genocidas. We will not destroy a civilization because it frightens our leaders. Celestial Hammer stands down. The mutiny spread. On the second dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, a Tharnoke engineering crew disabled the planet killer's power systems. On the third, Final Judgment, the weapons officer simply refused to fire, and when threatened with execution, 24 of their fellow crew members formed a barrier around them. Admiral Kethvar watched his invasion force disintegrate before his eyes. Ships were defecting. Crews were mutinying. Even among those still loyal, the conviction that had driven them into the Veil Nebula had shattered against Maya Chen's simple question. Was obedience worth becoming murderers? Admiral, Shureth said softly, we've lost operational effectiveness. 17 ships have defected to the Dominion. 43 more have declared neutrality and are withdrawing. The dreadnoughts cannot fire. And morale among remaining forces is critically low. Kethvar slumped in his command chair. He'd come to crush a rebellion with overwhelming force. Instead, he'd sparked a revolution. Open a channel to the Dominion Command, he said quietly. Request, negotiations. The Treaty of Aurora was signed 3 weeks later, aboard a neutral station hastily constructed at the border between Council Space and the Veil Nebula. Maya Chen represented the Dominion, now swollen to include not just humans and Kethral, but Zichentai, 17 defecting Council species, and 3 civilizations that had been hiding on the edges of known space waiting for someone to challenge Council supremacy. The terms were simple. The Council would recognize the Dominion as a sovereign entity. They would not interfere with Dominion affairs, and the Dominion would not actively recruit from Council space, though any species that chose to leave would be welcomed. Most importantly, a fundamental principle was established. No civilization could be forced to remain part of the Council against their will. Admiral Kethvar signed for the Council, his antennae drooping with the weight of defeat. Not a military defeat, the Council still commanded superior forces. But a moral defeat from which the Council's authority might never recover. As Maya placed her signature on the treaty, she thought back to that day 5 years ago when she'd stood alone before the Council, hearing their judgment. How terrified she'd been. How certain that humanity faced extinction. Now she stood at the head of a dominion that spanned 47 worlds, represented dozens of species, and embodied a principle that the Council had tried to suppress. Freedom is not granted by authority, it's claimed by courage. 10 years after the Treaty of Aurora, Maya Chen stood in the observation dome of Dominion Station, the massive orbital facility that served as the Confederation's capital. Below, Aurora gleamed blue and green, a testament to what free peoples could build when given the chance. She was 77 now, retirement beckoning, ready to pass her responsibilities to the next generation. Marcus Webb would make a fine president. He'd proven himself both as a warrior and a diplomat. Beside her, archive keeper Thelnara, now a close friend despite the millennia and species separating them, stood in contemplative silence. Do you think we've won? Maya asked. Truly won. Thelnara's skin rippled with patterns indicating thoughtful consideration. Victory is not a destination but a direction. The Council still exists, still enforces conformity in its space. But now there's an alternative. Now species know they can choose freedom. That's not winning, it's beginning. Through the dome, they could see ships coming and going, human, Kethral, Xiantai, and a dozen other species, all flying under the Dominion's flag. A single star surrounded by a circle that was incomplete, symbolizing a civilization forever open to new members. In the station schools, children of multiple species learned together, taught to question authority, to innovate, to dream without limits. In the research labs, scientists pushed boundaries the council had declared off-limits. In the art galleries, creators blended aesthetic traditions in ways that produced beauty the galaxy had never seen. And across known space, on worlds still under council rule, people looked toward the Veil Nebula and whispered about the exiles who dared to say no. Maya smiled, thinking of all those who'd made this possible. The millions who'd taken the risk of exodus. The thousands who'd died building colonies on hostile worlds. The Kethral who'd slept for millennia waiting for worthy allies. The council soldiers who'd chosen conscience over orders. We were cast out, she said softly, because we refused to be small. Because we dreamed too large. Because we wouldn't accept that our potential had limits imposed by others' fear. And now? Delnara asked. Now we've proven what humanity always believed. That exile is not an ending but an opportunity. That rejection by one civilization means we can build something better. That the stars themselves belong to those brave enough to reach for them. Behind them, in the station's assembly hall, delegates from 83 species were gathering to discuss the Dominion's future. Some had been members for years. Others had defected from the council just weeks ago. All of them shared one thing, the unwillingness to let others define their limitations. Maya turned from the observation dome, ready to address the assembly one final time before stepping down. As she walked, she thought about that young diplomat who'd stood before the Galactic Council 30 years ago, terrified and alone. She wished she could tell that younger version of herself not to fear. That rejection would become redemption. That humanity's exile would spark a revolution. That the species cast out as too independent, too innovative, too unwilling to obey would reshape the galaxy itself. The Dominion had begun with humanity's defiance. It had grown through alliances forged in adversity. It had survived by proving that diversity was strength, not weakness. And it would endure because it was built not on control but on consent, not on limiting dreams but on helping them soar. As Maya Chen entered the assembly hall to thunderous applause from dozens of species, she knew humanity's true journey among the stars had just begun. They'd been exiled from one galactic civilization, but they'd built something better in its place. And across the cosmos, on 1,000 worlds where beings looked up at the night sky with longing, a new hope had taken root. The hope that somewhere out there, among the exiled stars, there was a place where anyone could be free. The galaxy would never be the same.